Hello students, I am Raghavan Kumar Singh, faculty of US Academy and Institute. Today we will discuss class 7th History 2nd chapter, New Kings and Kingdoms. In this chapter we will discuss about the emergence of new dynasties after the 7th century. By the 7th century there were big landlords or warriors, chief in different regions of the subcontinent. The emergence of new dynasties by the 7th century, different regions of the subcontinent had big landlords and warriors chief who were acknowledged as the subordinates or samantas by the existing king. They had to bring gifts for their kings and overlord and had to be present at their court and provide military supports. However, as these samantas gained different powers and wealth which were declared by themselves as Mahasamanta, Mahamandaleshwara, who is the great lord of a particular region or a circle at that time, and so on. At times they were asserted their independence from their overlords. Given is the example of Rashtrakutas in the Deccan region, who were subordinates of the Chalukyas of Karnataka. In the mid-8th century, Danti Durga, a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew the Chalukya overlord and performed a ritual called Hiranyagarbha, which literally means the golden womb, with the help of Brahmanas. This is a ritual thing which was thought to lead the rebirth of the sacrifice as a Kshatriya, even if he was not one by birth. In other cases, men for enterprising families used their military skills to carve out kingdoms like the Kadamba, Mayura Sarman, and the Gujara Pratihara Harichandra. They were Brahmanas who gave up their traditional professions and took the arms, successfully establishing kingdom in Karnataka and Rajasthan respectively. Now about the administration and the kingdom. The administration in the kingdom. New kings took up high sounding titles such as Maharaja, Adhiraj, Great King, or Overlord of Kings, Tribhuvana, Chakravarti, Samrat, Lord of the Three Worlds, and so on. Most of the names were given to them. However, they also shared power with their samantas as well as with associations of peasants, traders, and brahmanas. In these states, resources were obtained from the producers such as peasant, cattle keepers, artisans, and so on, who were often persuaded or compelled to surrender parts of what they produced, sometimes claimed as rent due to a lord who asserted that he owned the land. Revenue was also called the collected and from the traders. Revenue were also being collected from the traders and the peoples who were working. These resources were used to finance the king's establishment and for the construction of temples and forts. They were also used to fight wars, thus leading to the acquisitions of wealth in the form of plunder and access to land as well as trade routes. The functionaries for collecting revenue were generally recruited from influential families, and positions were often hereditary. These were true about the army as well. In many cases, close relatives of the kings held their position. Now about the prasastis and land grants. Prasastis composed by learned brahmanas who occasionally helped in the administration contain detail that they may not be literally true, but will tell us about how rulers wanted to depict themselves as valiant, victorious warriors. For example, kings often rewarded brahmanas by grant of lands, which were recorded on copper plates. These plates were given to those who received the lands. Unusual for the 12th century, as a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of king who ruled over Kashmir, composed by an author named Kalhana, who was often critical about rulers and their policies, unlike other writers. He used a variety of sources, including inscription, document, eyewitness accounts, and earlier histories, to write his account. Now about the warfare for wealth. Ruling dynasties, though based in a specific region, also tried to control over areas. The city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley is a prized area to get control over which rulers belonging to the Gurjara, Pratihara, Rashtrakutas, and Pal dynasties fought for centuries. Since there were three parties involved in this long drawn conflict, historians describe it as a tripartite struggle. Rulers also tried to demonstrate their power and resources by building large temples, hence which they attacked one another kingdom. They often choose to target temples which were sometimes extremely rich. One such ruler is Sultan Muhammad of Ghazni, Afghanistan, who ruled from 997 to 1030, means 9th century or 10th century till 11th century, 103 north, and extended control over parts of Central Asia, Iran, and the northwestern parts of the subcontinent. He raided the subcontinent almost every year, his target being wealthy temples, including that the Somnath, Gujarat. The wealth Mahmud carried away was used to creating a splendid capital city of Ghazni. Sultan Mahmud wanted to find out more about the peoples he conquered and trusted a scholar named Al-Biruni to write an account of the subcontinent in his Arabic work known as the Kitabul Hind, after consulting Sanskrit scholars. Other kings who engaged in warfare included the Chahamanas, later known as the Chauhans, who ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer. They attempted to expand their control to the west and the east, where they were opposed by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and the Gahadwalas of western Uttar Pradesh. The best known Chahamanas ruler was Prithviraj III, 1168 to 1192, who defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but lost to him the very next year in 1192. A closer look: the Cholas. From Uraiyar to Tanjavur. How did the Cholas rise to power? A minor chiefly family known as the Mataraiyar, who was subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram, held power in the Kaveri Delta. In the middle of the 9th century, Vijayalaya, who belonging to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Uraiyar, captured the delta from the Mataraiyar. He built the town of Tanjavur and a temple for goddess Nasubasudni there. The successor of Vijayalaya conquered neighboring region, and the kingdom grew in size and power, going on to include the Pandyan and the Pallava territories to the south and north. Meanwhile, Raja Raja I, one of the most powerful Chola ruler, became king in 985, expanded control over most of these areas, and also reorganized the administration of the empire. Raja Raja's son Rajendra I continued his policies and even raided the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka, and the countries of Southeast Asia, developing a navy for these expenditure. Now, splendid temples and bronze sculptures. Big temples of Tanjavur and Gangai Kandacholapuram, built by Raja Raja and Rajendra, architectural and sculptural marvels. Chola's temples often became the nuclei of settlement, which grew around them and were centers of craft production. Temples were also endowed with the land by rulers as well as by others. The peoples of this land went into maintaining all the specialists who worked at the temple and were often lived near it, such as priests, garlands makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, etc. Temples not only places of worship but also the hub of economical, social, and cultural activity of lives. Amongst the craft persons associated with the temples, the making of bronze images was the most distinctive. Chola bronze images were considered among the finest in the world. While most images were of deities, sometimes images were made up of devotees as well as. Now about the agriculture and pilgrims. Most of the achievements of the Cholas were possible via the new development in agriculture. River Kaveri branched off into several small channels before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. These channels overflow frequently, depositing fertile soils on their banks. Water from the channel also provides the necessary moisture for agriculture, particularly the cultivation of rice. Although agriculture had developed earlier in other parts of Tamil Nadu, it was only from the 5th and 6th century that this area was opened up for large-scale cultivation. Forests had to be cleared in some regions, while the land had to be relevelled in other areas. In the deltas region, embankment had to be built to prevent flooding, and canals had to be reconstructed or constructed to carry water to the field. In many areas, 2 crops were grown in a year. In many cases, It was necessary to water crops artificially. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. In some areas, wells were dug. In other places, huge tanks were constructed to collect rainwater. Remember that irrigation works require planning, means organizing labor and resources, maintaining these works, and deciding on how water is to be shared. Most of the new rulers, as well as peoples living in villages, took an active interest in these activities. Now, about the administration of the empire. The spread of irrigation agriculture led to the prosperity of settlements of peasants known as Ur. Groups of such villages formed larger units called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu performs several administrative functions, including dispensing justice and collecting taxes. Rich peasants of the Vallala caste exercised considerable control over the affair of the Nadu under the supervision of the central Chola government. The Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Mevenda Velan, a Velan or a peasant serving three kings, Arayar, who is the chief, etc., as a marker of respect, and entrusted them with important offices of the states at the center. Brahmanas received a large number of lands, grants, or Brahmadeva, thus leading to the emergence of a large number of Brahmana settlements in the Kaveri Valley, as in other parts of South India. Each Brahmadeva was looked after by an assembly or sabha of prominent Brahmana landholders who worked very efficiently. Their decisions were recorded in details in inscription, often on the stone walls of temples. Association of traders known as Anagaram also occasionally performed administrative functions in towns. Inscriptions from Uttaramerur in Chingleput district, Tamil Nadu provided details of the way in which the Sabha was organized. The Sabha had separated committees to look after irrigation works, gardens, temples, etc. Names of these eligible to be members of these committees were written on a small ticket of palm leaf. These tickets were put into an earthenware pot, for which a young boy was asked to take out the ticket one by one for each committee.